Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. Alasdair, you need plenty of coffee because we're going to talk about your players starting right off. So, nice sip of coffee because we're going to hammer you. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. And in particular, thanks to our new Patreon. Remember, you can become a patron of Lazio Lounge going to patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. 3 new members this June. Thanks to Darren, Oliver, Phil Rasmussen, and Thomas Scarlett. We really, really appreciate your support. And please, Alasdair just published last night, just after the final whistle, a video from the Stadio Olimpico. He was lucky enough to go there. I did a video last week about Kumbula situation. So if you subscribe, became a patron, you can get all this, and it's $2 a month. It's less than the coffee Alasdair is drinking. So, you can help us massively to keep up going to this podcast, the only podcast in English about Lazio. So, we need your help. We're doing it for you, and, we appreciate your support. But before talking about Lazio in general, Alasdair, can we stop from today talking about Bastos as a forward, as a striker? I mean, what happened yesterday is simply embarrassing.
I honestly don't know what you're talking about. I mean, the way I remember it happening was that Ciro Immobile was about 7 or 8 meters offside. Bastos was frustrated about this and did the right thing and kicked the ball away to slow down the Fiorentina counter-attack. So it was actually good defending. That's what it was.
Wow. This is great. I mean, a misinterpretation of everything. But really,
there's no shifting me off this Team Bastos push. I'm not going to give up on it after one miss. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty shocking. I was quite, I was just saying to you before we came on, I wouldn't say it was relief because I would have preferred if he'd scored, but when the offside flag went up, I did feel a bit of relief for the man himself. But it was a classic Bastos first half, really, because he started off relatively well, but then in the space of about 2 minutes managed to miss an open goal and then absolutely launch himself into a tackle to get a yellow card that at the time I thought might have been worse, but on the replay I think it was probably about right. But yeah, it wasn't a big surprise to see him come off. I don't think so, no. I don't think it was quite as reckless as that, but it was just the kind of tackle that we want Bastos to stop making. It's the kind of thing we praised him for his improvement over the last couple of years, but that's kind of old Bastos style tackling, which we don't need from him.
And what happened when Bastos gets a yellow card in the first half? He gets subs immediately at the end. And Rado came in. We're going to talk about Rado and the other players because the physical condition of this team is something we have to talk about. But let's start on the positive side, Alasdair. Lazio went down 1-0 against a Fiorentina that I thought played quite well in the first half. But in the second half, Lazio came back. I don't think it was thanks to the physical condition. I think a lot of players were tired. We weren't running really well. But the big difference was the mental, the willingness of winning this match. You can see that really Lazio player wanted that victory. And at the end, they were able to capitalize and get this very, very important 3 points thanks to a penalty and a great goal from Luis Alberto.
Yeah, I've just published an article about this very thing this morning, actually, basically saying that it was great to see again that mentality, that reaction to adversity, that kind of team unity, which has really characterized the team's success throughout this entire season and really started from that Atalanta game that we were mentioning in the build-up, not the one on Wednesday, but the first one when we came back from 3-0 down to draw 3-3. And basically, if you look at the chain of events since then, there hasn't been a single game where Lazio have given up on a result. The amount of times that we've had late winners we've talked about before, especially in that period around Christmas, New Year. But also the amount of times we've come back to win games now. Juventus, Fiorentina, Cagliari, Brescia, Inter, all these games Lazio have gone behind and come back to win. And the thing that makes that doubly impressive is that actually when Lazio beat Rennes in the Europa League back in October. That was the first time in almost a year and a half that they'd come back from a losing position to win any game. So that tells you an awful lot, I think, about the transformation that's taken place in the belief that this team has. And I was a little bit worried that that might be something that gets affected by this long absence, by the time off. But last night, I think we saw that plenty of evidence that that is still there.
I think, and I don't know if you agree with me, Alasdair, in the second half, Luis Alberto started playing. And when Luis Alberto started playing, Lazio become more and more dangerous. And we saw it. In the first half, like in Bergamo, Luis Alberto didn't play great football. Like in the first half yesterday, in the second half, he stepped up and Lazio became much more dangerous, even though, you can see players running really slowly and struggling. But still, with Luis Alberto, with the mental condition of Lazio players, Lazio was able to beat a good team because Fiorentina didn't play bad at all. I think this is one of the reasons why Lazio won. Luis Alberto, when he's playing like that, Lazio become a completely different team.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's still. I think it makes a big difference because we talked about how he underperformed against Atalanta, and as a result, Lazio underperformed. I think there's still a few concerns. I think Ciro again wasn't brilliant, wasn't as sharp as he could be, but obviously put away the penalty very well. But yeah, I think Alberto being on top form is critical to this team playing well. I think Milinkovic-Savic outplayed him in the last game, but this game it was the other way around. I would quite like to have a game now where they both play at the top of their ability at the same time. That'd be absolutely perfect because that's when Lazio are most dangerous. But yeah, I mean, I think all in all, we have to be pretty satisfied with how it went. I was a bit frustrated, to be honest, to see at half-time of that game quite how much criticism the fans that I was seeing on social media anyway were aiming at this team because they were 1-0 down. They hadn't played brilliantly, but they had grown into the game. They started slowly, with complete contrast to the Atalanta match. But the second half of that first half, they really grew into the game, and I felt like they're starting to really find a bit more confidence. So to see people kind of throwing the team under the bus when we've got so much evidence already that this team can turn games around and does believe in games until the end was a little bit frustrating. I think we need to perhaps take a step back and remember what this team has achieved and why we should believe in them, and that this team is different to versions in the past.
Yeah, let's not forget that we started the season and our goal was reaching the Champions League. Now we are second, so, we are overachieving, and this is something people tend to forget. I mean, even arriving second would be an incredible result. I did a video on my Italian channel this week, remembering, guys, Inter bought Lukaku for 68 million euros. That is the sum of the last two transfer market of Lazio. And we are above of Inter, So this tells you a lot, right? Lukaku cost like twice Lazio transfer market of the last 2 years. And we are above Inter and playing better than Inter. So, guys, remember that you are supporting Lazio, not Juventus. So, And the other thing, Alasdair, Lazzari was probably the only Lazio player running for 90 minutes. He's the only one who give me the impression to be already fit, 100% fit. He had a great performance. Even Johnny, I thought, in the second half, step up and put a lot of balls in the middle. The biggest problem was that Immobile and Caicedo were too tired to get in position when these balls was coming in from the wingers. So I thought Lazzari and Johnny in the second half played great, but Immobile and Caicedo weren't simply fast enough to get in the box.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Johnny was really unlucky not to score as well. I mean, the way he hit that half volley was, that takes some serious technique to keep that down. And that was an absolutely phenomenal save. I mean, seeing that in real time as well, the reaction speed to get to that was incredible by Dragowski. So he was a bit unlucky. I think he was another player who I think was criticised more than he needed to be last night. Lazzari is... I was just thinking this during the game last night. I don't think it's any surprise really that the player who's performed best for Lazio over the last 2 games is the player who is notoriously the fittest guy in the entire team. So it's great to see Lazio come back so strong. I think he was the most dangerous player, certainly in the first half for Lazio, when absolutely everything was going down that right-hand side. And I just hope that everyone else can kind of catch up with him. I mean, he is a bit of a freak of nature, I think, in terms of his lung capacity and his energy. But yeah, I think he kind of set the bar quite high for everyone else to follow. But he looks in great shape.
You know what? The shot of Johnny, remember me? The one of Garrido in the derby? Do you remember Javier Garrido? The left
Garrido.
back who
Yeah,
came,
yeah. Spanish left back, yeah.
he hit the crossbar in a derby in a shot like that. I think that could change the career of Garrido, like this one could have changed Johnny career. I don't know if our listener remember that and what are your impressions. I thought in the first half he was a little bit shy. Johnny was more focused on defending than attacking. In the second half, when we were down, he a little bit relaxed and we could see him pushing a bit. Then obviously when he got subbed, he was really done. So, but yeah, overall I thought Lazzari was man of the match with Luis Alberto for me, but Johnny played better than before, and this is really promising because we're gonna talk about the injury situation. But Lulic is probably out for the season. Lukaku again came in, but didn't seem very much fit. So I don't know. At the moment, the only option we have on the left is Johnny and Marusic, who could slide on the other side. So it's important that we have Johnny back.
We need to talk about the penalty, Vittorio.
Which one?
Okay, the one we actually got, because this has been obviously the most contentious part of the entire match, the kind of controversy that is as people are still talking about. And yes, there is a lot of hypocrisy in some of the comments about this and so on, but the fact of the matter is, for me, it's not a penalty. And we would all be absolutely furious if that had happened at the other end and it'd be given. Do you disagree?
You know what? The rule says is a penalty. I totally agree that Caicedo dived before Dragowski hits him, but Caicedo touches the ball, the goalkeeper doesn't, and at that point Dragowski should stop, but it's pretty much impossible. So I understand it's a very soft penalty, but I think it's a penalty. To be honest, for me, it was much clearer the penalty on Milinkovic Savic in the first half than this one. But, you know, reading the Gazzetta dello Sport that is notorious anti-Lazio and saying that it's a penalty, this proves you like that, yeah, you could give the penalty. It's not a scandal for me. But I agree that it's very soft.
No, I think it would have been a penalty if he'd stayed on his feet for another 2 steps, because then he makes contact with the goalkeeper who wasn't getting to the ball and he's in his line of running and he would have tripped him up, and that is pretty textbook penalty at that point. But it can't be for me if he's already collapsing to the ground before there's any contact made, because he's not been tripped by Dragowski if he's already falling over. So I can understand why Fiorentina fans would be absolutely raging about that, but yeah, it is what it is. I mean, the point that a lot of people have made as well from the Lazio perspective on this is that we've had a pretty tough rub of the green when it comes to penalty decisions over the last couple of years. So it's nice to get these ones in our favour, even if it's a bit mind-boggling that the VAR hasn't overturned these decisions. But
Alasdair, let's make it clear. When there's a contact, VAR cannot intervene if the referee says, I saw it. And if Fabri said, I saw it, I saw the contact. So the VR is it's unavailable. I agree with you that Caicedo should have keep running instead of diving before. But this, for me, let's not get it wrong. I think this is a problem of VR. Because most of the time, the referee see the contact, but in real time, you really don't understand how much is intense, if he was diving before, later, etc. So I think they should change the rule because, yeah, even if the referee sees it, the VR should be able to intervene and say, hey, look again, because probably you didn't see it correctly. Doesn't make sense, this. I understand that we won't. The idea is to keep the referee in control. He has to take the final decision. Blah blah blah. But why doesn't the VR? Why the VR is not able to intervene when there's a contact? Most of the time, they make mistakes on contact. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think you need to be, as football fans, we need to be honest about these kind of things, because it'll go both ways. And if you're going to be furious about it when the shoe's on the other foot, then you need to be honest about it now and say that's not good enough. And that's why I have said that. I don't think it is good enough. I don't think it's the right decision. And I don't think the VAR situation is right, that they're not able to overturn that, because the whole point of introducing it is to get more honest and correct decisions made. And for me, that wasn't right. But look, I mean, I'm not saying that's, Lazio wouldn't have won the game if it hadn't happened. I don't know. But the reason Lazio got the penalty, for me, kind of taking it back to the game, was the fact that in the second half, they did manage to get on the front foot again and kind of turn around the performance and start causing a few more problems. Because for me, in the first half, it was all just a bit too ponderous. I think Fiorentina defended pretty well and they got numbers back quickly. They're an energetic team, and that you would watch Lazio trying to pass their way through this kind of bank of 3 in midfield and 5 in defence, and it just wasn't fast enough. It wasn't clever enough, inventive enough. And then in the second half, all of a sudden, Lazio are stretching the pitch more. They're causing more problems. They're moving the ball faster, and kind of wonder why that wasn't happening sooner. But it was good to see, like I'll say it again, that they have this belief. And I think it was Ciro Immobile wrote on Instagram, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, if we can't win with the legs, we'll win with the heart. And I think that is pretty much the kind of motto of this team by now. But the question I've got for you really is that, can this team really keep winning with the heart for the rest of the season when we've got so many injuries and so many fixtures?
Well, the biggest problem is injury. The thing is, for Torino, probably there's a chance that Cataldi and Luis Felipe could be back in the squad. We already saw Marusic, Radu, and Correa playing yesterday. I don't think Correa really played. I don't think he touched the ball, and he wasn't fit, but he came in. So that's obviously a positive thing. The other thing we have to point out is that, apart from Atalanta, I didn't see great performance. I mean, Juventus beat Lecce 4-0, but before the red card of the Lecce player, Lecce was dominating the match. And even afterwards, Juventus didn't play well. We saw Inter drawing against Sassuolo, playing a bad team. Inter didn't play well at all. So this is a very different type of football. I don't think we're going to see a lot of teams playing amazingly well. So this can open the chance for Lazio. Said this, the performance, the condition have to improve, and I think it will, because going further, playing more matches, players will be more fit. Now, the biggest problem is injury, because we always said it. Lazio's bench is not huge, and we saw it yesterday. I think Lazio had, Radu, Correa, Marusic, and that's it, and Lukaku on the bench of players coming from the first squad. Talking of that, Alasdair, I was impressed by Javan Anderson. I thought he came in and had a decent impact with the match. He can be very useful because he's speedy, he's fast. He can be a very interesting player for the coming matches.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting change, that one, I thought. Obviously, like you say, a guy with a lot of energy, a lot of athleticism, and that in itself will be useful. But I think before then, he'd played about 26 or so to half an hour or so of football for the last two of the season. And I think that might have been the Cremonese game in the Coppa Italia. I can't remember, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, going back to kind of what we were talking about after the last game, you are just now looking at guys who barely featured for this team. Guys like the two Andersons and Lukaku, and whenever Raul Moro or Adekani are fit again, and you're relying on these guys to be able to provide something, having barely played for the team. So I think we're going to see a bit more of that. I mean, I do hope that the injury list clears up a little bit soon. Thankfully, Torino is next up. on Tuesday. I think it's not an easy game, but it's going to be hopefully a bit easier than Fiorentina was. I don't think this Torino team is up to much, to be honest. I think they've got some good players in there. I like Alex Berenguer, he's a good player, and Belotti can be when he decides to be. But it is the kind of match that Lazio should be winning, and I do hope that even with the problems that we've got in the squad, they're going to have enough. And the good thing as well is that we talked about the point of momentum before we came back, and the worry that losing that first game could kill that momentum. But I think that in a way, winning that game last night against Fiorentina in that manner, coming back from behind to win it late on in all those circumstances, that might actually do a lot more to get this team's momentum running again than if they'd won it 5-0, because it gives them that extra boost, that extra belief. I think if they show that they're capable of doing that and coming back from a losing position.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And losing the first two matches could have been terrible for Lazio, because Ciro Immobile spoke after the match and said playing the first match against Atalanta after 3 months not playing, that was really tough on us, and we were a little bit disappointed to see a lot of fans and journalists saying that we were done, we were playing terrible, that Lazio was finished, and we are not in a great condition, and we saw it, but we won this match, and this is really important for our moral. And I think this can be really the key, because recovering from a not bad, but not very good first half. I still remember Caicedo had a terrific chance in the first half that missed on a corner kick, I think it was. So I think the condition will improve, and the injury situation. As I said, against Fiorentina, our bench was terrible. Now, the rumors are that Cataldi and Luis Felipe could be back against Torino. Lulic's season is over. We hope to have back Leva for the Milan match, that is the one after Torino. Correa, Marusic played yesterday. I hope they should be fit for Torino. I don't know if Marusic can start. I think Marusic was in a better condition than Correa, so I think Caicedo will be starting again. But let's not forget that Caicedo was subbed because he had a little bit of muscle problem. So again, you have really 2 days to recover. I don't know who will start there. I really don't know what happened to Raul Moro and Adekanye, because Raul Moro played the friendly match against Hernana and then was said that he was injured. We don't know if they will be fit to play against Torino. It would be important to have more options on the bench, especially because we said that these are two very speedy players that, if they come in the last 20 minutes, they can really create big problems to Torino defense or any defense, because they're very fast. We don't know their condition. I hope they're going to be able to play, because, they can be a big help for Lazio.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they've gone under the radar a little bit in terms of the issues with selection that Inzaghi's got. I think those two players have been kind of almost forgotten about compared to the others, just because they've not played as much. But because they are both options in that forward area, I think it's really, really important to get them back as soon as possible, because what we've seen in the last couple of games is that there just aren't those options up front. I mean, Caicedo, Correa, and Immobile, and when you've got Caicedo limping off last night, you've got Correa obviously with his own fitness issues, and Immobile's not in his best form, and he's not going to be able to play every single game, then you need those extra options. And let's not forget, Bobby Adekanye, he's been used infrequently, but he did come on and score his first Serie A goal against Spal, I think it was, not long before the break. So he was being phased in more and more and showing that he could, play a part in the first team. So he's not as much of a wild card unknown as Raul Moro is, who's still obviously very young, just 17. But I think Bobby Adekanye could be the kind of player who actually could make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so it's really important. Again, because we really didn't have an option yesterday on the bench. I thought maybe they can bring another striker from the Primavera up, but we didn't have option there. So more option you have, more chance you have about substitution. Inzaghi won't be on the bench against Torino. He has been he received a red card. I thought it was a little bit too harsh. I mean, he came in the pitch to give indication to some of Lazio players, and the ref sent him off. So I think that Fabri had a terrible day yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, it was really interesting, being at the game last night. Obviously, it was pretty much just kind of journalists and the players. That was about it. But it did give you a kind of insight into the way the team communicates, and I found it a lot clearer to see that than it is on the TV, where you do still hear instructions from the touchline and so on. But it really it was a bit of an eye-opener. I mentioned this in my Patreon video at the end, kind of seeing how the team talks to each other, how Inzaghi communicates with the players, who the most vocal players on the pitch are. I mean, Francesco Acerbi stood out for me. You could really see firsthand quite how much of a leader he is with that defence. And yeah, that was a really interesting point. But I think Inzaghi, you've got to control yourself. I mean, I know he's an energetic man, to say the least, when it comes to being on the touchline. But it seems like the risk of doing that, the risk and reward ratio isn't quite right for him there, because he's now obviously I think he'll miss the Torino game. Is that right? I can't remember exactly how the coach suspensions work, but
yeah, if you get the red card, you miss the next game.
Yeah. So it does seem like a bit of a shame, and I mean, especially considering having seen firsthand last night quite how vocal he is, quite how specifically he directs the players on the pitch, moving them around, telling him to do this, do that. And to not have that presence on the touchline, I think actually affects a team like Lazio probably more than most other teams, because Inzaghi is more directly involved with the team instructions throughout the game than most coaches are. So, yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, but, with an empty stadium, you can still give indication from the stands. So I don't think that's a big problem, honestly. But yeah, obviously it would have been better without the red card. Before we wrap it up, Alasdair, we have to talk about Kumbulla, because this week there have been a lot of rumors about Kumbulla. I did a video exclusive for Patreon, so go and watch it. Lazio, it looks to be very close to sign Mohamed Kumbulla, the Verona defender, 20 years old. What do you think about that? Is it a great signing? Do you think the value is good or is too expensive? We're talking about 30 million euros.
First of all, I think his name's Marash, not Mohamed.
Yeah, Marash, sorry.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think would be a tremendous signing. I think he's a very Inzaghi defender. I think he's versatile enough to play across that back three. I think at the age of just 20, having had a great Serie A season behind him, he has a hell of a lot of potential to play to be a major player for Lazio. I think the fact that Iglitare has been watching this guy for years now, this isn't just a reactive signing after one good season. This is someone that Tare's been looking at for quite a long time. So I think there's plenty of reason to be very excited about this signing. As for the transfer fee, well, it depends how the actual deal would be put together. I mean, obviously they've talked about it being 20 million or so plus a couple of players, Valen Berisha maybe, Cristiano Lombardi. I think Verona were asking for Keane, but they don't want to give him away. But I think that's not a bad deal. I mean, this is a good time for Lazio to actually try and win the race for players like this who are wanted by some of the bigger teams in the league. I know you mentioned in your video that Juventus aren't going to be really looking at this, and Inter might not be able to or have lost interest to. So, yeah, I mean, I think it would be a terrific signing for Lazio, but if they've got the financial capability to do it, then I think they should get it across the line, because I think there's so much potential from this player, and I really like what I've seen from him so far. I know people have picked out various errors and so on, but the guy's 20 years old. Of course he's going to have errors in his game, but he has a lot of potential to improve.
Yeah, I agree. And there's Premier League interested to the player, so it's better to sign him as soon as possible if Lazio really want to sign him and so close the deal. There's something funny because usually at this time Serie A is over and the new contract will start from the 1st of July. Obviously, he's going to finish the season with Verona, and so Lazio and Verona were also discussing over insurance because what happened if he play till August with Verona and get injured? So they're talking about that. Lazio could have an insurance if the player get injured because he finished the season with Verona. So this is another completely new, interesting point of view thanks to this restart of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of satisfying as well to see Lazio kind of looking at making big signings like this at the same time that Roma are taking out loans to stay afloat. But that's maybe a story for another time.
Yeah, we're gonna mention this in another podcast. Alasdair, thank you again. I'm happy you passed from the coffee to a glass of water. This means that you woke up. And we're going to talk again after Torino-Lazio, another very, very important match for Lazio. And again, guys, remember, you can listen us on iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, on YouTube, and obviously you can support us on Patreon. Thank you again, Alasdair. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please rate and review the podcast. And we're going to talk again after Torino-Lazio. Good night, everybody.
Good job.